Someone asked on Reddit, what's the weirdest date you ever went on? Which story do you think is the strangest meeting? Let's meet in the comments. Store 1.
I matched with someone on Tinder who openly talked about having mental health issues and PTSD due to past traumas. We decided to meet up for bubble tea. I was sitting in a place waiting when she walked in with a big stuffed shark. Awesome. Plush toys are great. They can be a good therapeutic tool. Without even saying hello, she started talking about how she had been attacked and the difficult experiences she had gone through. I work in healthcare, so I felt I could listen. But the problem was, she was speaking really loudly. She was discussing some tough topics at an uncomfortable volume. I couldn't guide the conversation or change the subject. She wasn't allowing for any of that. So I panicked and said, "Do you want to go to your car and kiss?" Her eyes lit up, and she relaxed her grip on the stuffed shark. Okay. We went back to her car and shared a very awkward kiss. It was mostly teeth colliding, and the shark was between us. I had previously mentioned how open-minded I was about her interests. In the middle of this unusual kiss, she asked me a strange question. "Should we do a little role play?" I panicked again. Are you sure? Maybe we could just take a walk in the park," I stammered. We got out of the car and walked towards the park. The whole time, she continued talking about her past experiences. It was just really odd. We reached a more private area. In a soft voice, she said, "Maybe we shouldn't do this?" "Yes, that sounds good." While she watched, I felt overwhelmed. I took an Uber home and texted her that I had a good time. She completely ignored me.
Store 2.
I went on a date with a girl from Tinder. She texted me first and said she really liked me. So I was super happy that someone was interested. At one point, I asked if she wanted to go for a walk, and she said she definitely did. So we started walking, and about 5 minutes in, she asked me if I had any roommates. I said yes, I lived with 5 people, and I mentioned a few of them. Jake, Tom, Alex. Wait, is it Alex Parker? I know him. What's he up to? So we started chatting about my roommate, and she seemed to know a ton about him. His family, the sports he plays, his girlfriend. Every time I tried to change the subject, she would bring it back to Alex. It was like she was no longer interested in me at all. She was just fangirling over my roommate. "I love him. His hair always looks so shiny and he smells amazing." We ended up spending like 2 hours just talking about him and her asking all kinds of questions. Honestly, I didn't know what to do, so I just kept answering her in a pretty boring way. When we got back to our cars, she switched gears again. "Hey, I had a really great time. Want to come back to my place for some fun?" At that point, I was kind of freaked out, so I told her I had some homework to do, and maybe we could do it another time. I went back and told Jake about the date, and he knew exactly who she was. He picked up his phone and called the cops right away. They came over, and they found her outside in our backyard, and they ended up arresting her for some kind of restraining order or something. It turned out she was kind of unhinged and had been stalking my roommate since they went on a date about a year ago. She recognized him from his pictures and used me to find out where he lived.
Story 3.
I went out with a guy who was supposed to pick me up after work. He showed up before my shift started and ended up staying all day. Either he stole something from my workplace or tried to, and I didn't find out until my coworkers told me the next day. He took me to a diner and he kept blowing his nose on the table. He also went to the bathroom a lot. When it was time to leave, his car broke down, and our server had to help him by using the tip he had given her. He talked about his hobby of live-action role-playing, or, for those who don't know, dressing up for weird things, and he belittled me by saying that the books I read were meant for little kids. After that, he invited me to hang out for the next 5 years, and I ended up blocking him on all social media. Eventually, I changed my email address to get away from him.
Story 4.
I had a crush on this girl, and she tricked me into a double date. She was dating another guy, and she had set me up with her sister. Since I was a good athlete, I went along with it. It was a little strange, but it wasn't too bad. Then she introduced me to her sister again, and this time it was just the two of us. We went to the park. Her car trunk was filled with troll dolls, like dozens and dozens of them. And she spent the whole date introducing me to each of her trolls. I should mention we were in our 20s. She got annoyed and upset because I didn't seem that interested in her dolls. So, while sitting there with her hands full of troll dolls, she asked me, "So, are we going to be physical? Do you know how to be physical?" I said, "Well, not with you. I don't do that." Then I stood up and walked home. I tried to be polite, but there's a limit to what's bearable.
Story 5.
I met up with a guy I'd been chatting with on a dating app for about a week. When I met him in person, He looked way more strange, and I started to get worried, but I still tried to be nice and talk to him. One of the first things he asked me was what I thought about girls selling their poop online to guys. I thought it was a joke, so I said something like, good for them, I guess, if they want to make money, or whatever, lol. He said I was unusual and refreshing or something like that. He mentioned that he had never dated anyone before and said he was autistic. I get that he might not understand social cues, but still, wow, it was a bit disturbing. He started talking about autism, and he said I looked like I might be on the spectrum too, maybe mild, since it's in my family. Still, it feels weird for a stranger to try to diagnose me. Then he asked me if I would sell my poop for money. I thought it was a joke again and said maybe for $1,000,000. But he was serious and asked me seriously if I'd sell it to him for $200. At this point, I felt more than just uncomfortable. And I told him it was nice meeting him, but I wasn't interested and that I was going to leave. Then he followed me out of the restaurant and suggested we go for a walk or do something else, and I said no. He kept following me and asking, and I just kept saying no. I ended up going into a nearby bookstore just to be in a safe public place to get to my car without being followed. Later, he tried calling me, and I told him I wasn't interested and that he needed to leave me alone. I blocked his number. But then he kept calling from another number, like 8 times, and I had to block those too. The moral of the story is to never give out your real phone number until you really know someone better, and always make sure your first dates are in a safe, public place.
Story 6.
I matched with a Chinese exchange student on Tinder. She told me to meet her at her apartment, and then we were supposed to go meet up with some of her friends by the beach. While we were on our way, we were messaging each other, and she said she didn't realize this was a date. Still, she asked me to pick up dinner for both of us. I get to her apartment, and before I could even take off my jacket, she goes, "Is there something you want to tell me?" I probably sat there in silence for about 15 seconds. I offered her the food she wanted, but she said she wasn't hungry. I tried to start a conversation, but she shut down every topic I brought up. Then, she started messaging and making phone calls. I think she was speaking Mandarin, but I managed to catch the name of the place where we were supposed to meet her friends. She mentioned that plans might change because her friend needed help. Throughout all of this, I just sat there by myself, quietly eating my sandwich. When I was done, I asked her if she wanted me to leave. She said yes, and then gave me $20 for dinner.
Story 7.
I was 18 years old, in the Air Force, and living in the dorms. My roommate introduced me to his girlfriend's cousin, and the 4 of us went to the movies. She brought a stuffed animal. It wasn't just some small trinket that some girls attach to their keychains. It was a huge blue bunny, at least the size of a toddler. She said she brought it because she sometimes gets scared during movies. After the movie, we got some ice cream, and then we dropped her cousin off at home. When we got to the door, my date wanted me to kiss her, but she also said I had to kiss Pebbles too, so she wouldn't feel jealous. Of course, I kissed Pebbles. My date was actually pretty hot, definitely out of my league, but she was crazy.
Story 8.
My first ever date, and I was 16. This boy who lives in the next town over keeps bugging me at my job to go on a date with him. I finally relent. He says dress up nice, and I'll take you for a nice time. It was not a nice time. We first went to his house where I met his entire family. I'm socially awkward, so this is hell. I finally get him to leave BC. I'm hungry. He says we need to make a quick stop first. This man-child brings me to his best friend's house. His best friend is at work, BTW. What was the quick stop? To introduce me to his second set of parents. I'm at the end of my rope, but I'm stuck because he drove. We finally leave, and the entire time kept mentioning he'd buy us dinner somewhere nice. We go to McDonald's. Nice. He kept visiting my work, but finally understood there'd never be a second date.
Story 9.
It was my first date from a dating app. It started off pretty well. We had barely placed our dinner order when her phone started ringing. It was her ex, who was clearly not in the right state of mind and causing a scene outside her apartment. The ex kept calling, then her roommate started calling, and eventually her landlord called and said they were going to call the police. So we ended up getting our food to go, and I drove her back to her apartment. Long story short, both she and her ex were crying. She went inside, leaving me outside with her sobbing ex, who started telling me how he messed up their relationship. The guy was literally in no condition to be driving, so I took him back to her apartment, then took an Uber back to my car. That's when I realized my date had taken all the food with her. The joys of dating.
If you have a story you would like to share, Please share it with us in the comments. Also, subscribe to my channel for more Reddit stories like this. And don't forget to turn on notifications. Take care, friends.